What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Guys, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like you're watching a circus where the ringmaster is the only one safe from the lions? That is the Putin's Russia for you, where today's revered governor of a problematic region is tomorrow's prison statistic. The arrest of Alexei Smirnov, the once praised Kursk governor, is the latest example in this predictable, yet still somehow surprising performance. Elected with a suspicious 65% on September 8, 2024, and unceremoniously kicked out on December 5th, he found himself behind bars already on April 15, 2025. 7 months only passed from being political hero to cellmate. Quicker than you can say special military operation in Russian, which is специальная военная операция. What makes this particular case so special is that he used to be the governor of Kursk region once again, the one where Ukrainians intruded back in August 2024. Well, that's right. Only 1 month later, the failed governor who allowed this to happen was replaced by Smirnov. But it turned out that he was just looks like a sponge to absorb all the blame, guilt, before the actual governor was installed, who is Putin's favorite drama queen Alexander Hinstein. And you know what? It looks like he was able to do his job perfectly. Due to the controversy and notoriousness of his persona, most Russians simply forgot that there was something even happening in Kursk. It became completely irrelevant, just like this. Hinstein's questionable appointment became the new talk in town. Fast forward to these days, and the old governor of Kursk goes down completely. Not without the media attention he shouldn't have gotten in the first place. But why unleash this manic purge on your own lieutenants? Why promote someone to the pinnacle of regional power, just to then later charge them with the embezzling defense construction funds charges? Well, literally a few months later. Is it incompetence, paranoia, or something more sinister? So today, guys, let's look under the hood of a system that prizes fear over fidelity. Investigate decades of repression, bizarre wartime purges, brutal crackdowns on generals and professors alike, and the twisted rationale that keeps even loyalists trembling at the thought of tomorrow. Alright, picture this. Mid-May 2024. Smirnov lands in Kursk like a surprise birthday party. Suddenly the spotlight is all on him. Cameras flash, press releases flood the media, and the local TV channels, all obviously state-sponsored, declare him the savior of Kursk that, well, presidents never knew they needed. Then comes September 8, and as trenches of the Ukrainian army inched closer to Belgorod, Smirnov still wins in a landslide 65% victory. It was a testament either to his charm or to the ballot box shenanigans choreographed by the Kremlin. I wonder if this was the real reason of him winning. Of course it was. So yeah, fast forward to December 5th, and Smirnov's unceremonious dismissal arrives by presidential decree. Putin himself purged one of his allegedly most loyal governors, who was entrusted with the task of defending unstable Kursk region. No scandal, no paparazzi photos, just a press release announcing his replacement by Alexander Hinstein. Locals even whispered about unfinished dragon's teeth fortifications collapsing like fake dentures. Pun intended. They joked that Smirnov's campaign office had more empty promises than empty bank vaults. Yet, he stayed quiet, tightening his grip, hoping for some kind of a miracle. On April 15, 2025, state security stormed his apartment and took him out in handcuffs. Defense Construction Fund embezzlement, they announced, with such precision that it almost feels like that the arrest was rehearsed several times before the actual show. 7 months from once again winning an election to a cell bank. What a trajectory, what a journey. This trajectory also is not just a mere glitch, it is the main Kremlin's blueprint for decades, if not centuries at this point. One of the most memorable is the Great Purge of the 1930s, when Genrikh Yagoda, once Stalin's puppet master at the first show trial, found himself in the defendant's already position by 1938. Then a city named under secret police chief Nikolai Yezhov in 1937 was torn apart in 1939. No firing squads today, at least not what we know of, but who needs them when you can shatter reputations and livelihoods with a single court summons? In some cases, being arrested Russian style is much worse than meeting your destiny in the basements of Kremlin. So even though officially there is no kinda capital punishment in Russia, some of those arrested most likely wished there will be one. Because when power is inseparable from paranoia, every promotion ends up being a time bomb. You never know when the timer expires or what even triggers it in the first place. There are, by the way, several more examples of this happening, so guys, let's talk about this right now. Remember the days when being a regional governor was like wielding a golden scepter? Under early Putinism, your role came with a government car, an assistant who smiled too much, and a velvet rope barrier shielding you from prosecution. You stole government contracts, built mansions in Sochi, and maybe bought a dacha in the Black Sea coast, and nobody questioned anything. Well, if you screw up, you got fired, okay, well then shamed on state TV for a couple of nights, and rarely did anyone face hard time. The worst punishment was a demotion to a mayor of an unknown village, where the career road had way more potholes than prospects. But in 2015, something changed. 4 governors stood trial that year alone. Barinov, the first one who got busted in 2006, seemed like a one-time thing until the annexation of Crimea pumped up defense budgets and unleashed a carnivore law enforcement appetite. By 2021, indictment for theft and fraud were as routine as just morning coffee and a newspaper. Speaking about newspapers, according to Novaya Gazeta's grim score, from 2000 to 2020, a staggering 102 mayors and 30 governors across 53 different regions were charged, prosecuted, and some even jailed. Just think about it. Entire gubernatorial ecosystems were taken into courtrooms. Was there an actual accountability or simply a hunger to remind everyone that comfort and impunity were not guaranteed luxuries? As officials kept stealing funds meant to prop up tanks and bunkers, prosecutors sharpened their knives. Projects designed to defer NATO, like those symbolic dragon teeth we spoke about in the first chapter, became one of the main reasons for embezzlement charges when they got investigated. Retirees in Kursk even joked that Smirnov had dug trenches through his own bank account. Oligarch-style wealth was suddenly a liability, not a perk, and all the money that supposedly was his golden ticket out, a get-out-of-jail-free card, became the biggest evidence of his wrongdoings. Strangely enough, when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine kicked off in February 2022, the purge machine slammed its brakes. For nearly 2 years, governors and generals escaped the prosecution. Why? Because the state realized that mass arrests amid mobilization paranoia would spark a bureaucratic nightmare. Mid-level officials were checking under pressure, late-night meltdowns, whispered fears of impending economic collapse. And now imagine ordering every regional governor to churn out conscripts like, sausages, all while their own bank accounts and families were at risk of scrutiny. Well, if amid this instability those regional authorities dare to even say the word mobilization out loud, heads will guaranteed to start rolling. It was a recipe for disaster. So the Kremlin ordered a de facto amnesty, keep the war narrative coherent, sign every patriotic petition, and a knock at your door by the brave FSB officers would be maybe delayed. Even Vladimir Mao, rector of Russia's premier Ranepa, enjoyed a month under house arrest before charges vanished. He quietly hopped a flight to Israel, leaving bureaucratic headlines as empty as his office, and that's pretty much it. By the way, if you're unfamiliar with this person, he basically stole enormous amounts of money from the budget, therefore publicly prosecuted, before completely vanishing unharmed from media's attention. Just like hundreds of government officials before him also pre-2022. It was the safest interval in recent memory. Mayors and ministers alike could sleep in their own beds, free from the dread of jail benches. For once, the regime needed expertise and continuity more than it needed show trials. Then, March 2024 rolled around. Putin's re-election was guaranteed more than ever, war fatigue gave way to electoral euphoria, and the purge pedal got slammed to the floor once again. The message this time was clear. Loyalty has an expiration date and is measured in Kremlin's degrees. And it does not matter if you are top official from the Ministry of Defense or the head of some small regional university. Nobody was safe. The spring of 2024 brought perhaps the harshest internal reckoning since Yezhov's secret police spree in the late 1930s. The Ministry of Defense headquarters turned into a display of justice. So these generals, civilian deputies, entire directorates marched to detention centers in handcuffs. Ex-defense minister Sergei Shoigu, who everyone thought will be safe no matter what, was demoted to an honorary kinda retirement, while his once trusted aides vanished into pre-trial detention centers. No house arrests, no travel bans, just plain cells and barred windows. Shoigu is too big of a target to just arrest him like this and expect no public reaction. His subordinates, well, obviously completely different story. At least 95% of Russians never knew any single name of Shoigu's top people, until they ended up in court. The best confirmation of this is the story of Timur Ivanov, completely unknown man just 1 year ago. But the crackdown did not stop with camouflaged uniforms. The Tula regional administration was targeted next, when Governor Dyumin was reassigned and half of his cabinet was arrested overnight, just like this. Rostov-on-Don and Yekaterinburg's officials faced similar fates. Raids at dawn, shameful media commentary, and courtroom appearances shrouded in secrecy. Then 2025 arrived and got unofficially proclaimed as the year of the rector. 6 university presidents from Nizhny Novgorod's alma mater to Pskov's provincial campus found themselves prosecuted in the just first quarter alone, already outpacing 2024's annual total. Why academic heads, some ask? Because when the wolves of law enforcement get hungry, they devour the nearest high-profile targets. Embezzlement charges tied to student housing, renovations, phantom tenders for campus canteens, and alleged sabotage of draft registration campaigns. Well, all this was the reason for all this to happen. What's the rationale behind feeding these wolves, also some may ask? On one hand, it is practical. The regime cannot risk a governor lowballing conscription figures or a university shrugging at draft registrations. Missing manpower targets in Russia is not just an administrative oversight anymore. It is a crime of sabotage, one of the worst ones. So when you keep those authorities in check and make martyrs of their colleagues, it sends a very unambiguous message that if you are given a military-related assignment, you better do it perfectly. On the other hand, it is about sustenance. Law enforcement agencies need to arrest big names to justify their bloated budgets and seemingly endless human resources. With one big problem being here is that at some point you can become such big name that your former colleagues will now be hunting down in dreams of their own promotions and recognition. That is the dilemma of working inside the regime of Putin. If you are incapable of doing your responsibilities, you will be replaced, you will be gone. And if you are doing your job way too good and build a name for yourself, well, almost the same fate awaits you nevertheless. With the main difference is that you will have just more time in between, which most people use to suck as much money out of the state budgets as possible, thinking that this will become their free jail insurance contract. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and see you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.